It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Taco Tuesday. Oh, wait a minute. Is it $2 Tuesday? I don't know. I don't know. Hey, listen. I hope you enjoyed your Labor Day, and we back just like we never left, because we didn't. So real quick, let's hop right into it. So the Trumpisms, because we got to keep each other abreast of what's going on, aware of the goofballness that goes on with this presidency, unfortunately. And we'll be talking about other stuff this week, but I just had to talk about this briefly because if you ever think about it, the sad part about it is, guess what? Every time Trump won, it's like he beat a woman. What does that say about our society? Are we sexist? What's going on? But that'll be down the road. And we talked about that before. But let's talk more about what he just did on Friday, I believe, Thursday or Friday. And I was reading, what was I reading? FoxNews.com? Well, all of the different outlets, because I go through all of them. And it said that Sir Donald has, or should we call him Dictator Donald, has removed Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail. Now, even me, because, it's part of a learning experience with some stuff. And before 2008, I never even knew that they stopped getting as far as the vice presidents. The presidents and their families, I believe, keep it for the duration of their lives. But the vice president in 2008, Congress actually changed the law stating that Secret Service is to only last for the vice president and their family for a 6-month period of time, just for 6 months. So I guess if you look at it like that, from that angle, I guess Trump was being nice. Let's see, because he took office in January. So let's see, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. He ended it in August. So, okay, he was being nice. He gave her an extra month, an extra 30 days of coverage, right? The same kind of thing that he did with Fauci and a lot of other people, Dr. Fauci and a lot of other people, where he just ripped their Secret Service away from them. And you start to ask the question, and you say, well, why? Why would you do something like that? Why? But then again, I start to think, as I talk to other friends who have spouses who are going to lose their jobs because of this regime, and people who've had jobs for long periods of times. And, you just start to think about it and you say, this is what we always talk about. This is why it's important to reiterate, when you have a person who's just doing things to display the type of petulant behavior that you would expect out of somebody who wasn't in power in the largest office in the world, per se. And you would think that this would come from somebody who is more teenager-like. Now, even with Vice President Harris, here's the deal with that. So in January, former President Biden signed an executive order to allow her to keep her Secret Service for up to 18 months. All right. So he did put that in place, and Trump went behind it and said, nah, she's done. She's done now. She's done immediately. Get her off of it. And it's funny, man, because as much as people talk about people respecting women and not being a womanizer and all of this other kind of stuff, well, it seems to be that's kind of like what the president is. So I'm trying to think, people who voted for him, men, I wonder, did they feel like that also? Do you feel like he's a womanizer? Do you feel like he's just, he picks on women, because unfortunately he hasn't actually beaten a man, in the actual election. It's been 2 times, it's been a woman. And which I think is more reflective of what our country is as far as being sexist. All right. And I think that we all, even men, even probably me, have some of that in us with different things. But I'll raise my hand and say I've both voted for Hillary and I voted for Kamala. Right. So I have no problem saying that. And I have no problems wanting to be one of the people to affect change in a positive way, in a different way. The same way, like for African Americans have had an opportunity to thrive and to do different things, even like how we talked about the civil rights movement last week or week before last. And there have been strides made. Although there's still a long way to go, you have to start somewhere. And difference has to come from the people, from us. So, even my folks that are, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're stuck in this old way of doing things. Even me, when I start talking about how we deal with our younger guys out in the community and stuff like that, just having a change of how we deal with, and even not necessarily how we deal with, but how we talk to them, how we refer to them. I very, 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 and I understand because people say it, I don't say YNs. I just don't do it. Because like I said, one thing we're trying to work on, I know I'm trying to work on, is not using the N word at all, or is small as possible. Like every day, like when I was out today, I might have seen 5 or 6 people, coming in and out of the Wawa, just different things. Hey, good morning, good brother. How you doing? Good morning, good friend. Good morning, sir. Just terms that, can be used and that elevate a person, not denigrate or degrade a person. So, but back to Kamala, and I'm pretty sure, between her and her husband, they have the money for, the detail. But it's just security detail. But it's just crazy to me how he respects nobody's anything else. But he wants people to respect him. But he doesn't respect anybody else's rules or any things that they put in place. But he wants all of his things to be respected. It shows the kind of country that people live in. And like I always say, this is what I mean about when people talk about a race card. Nobody says to him like, hey dude, that might not be a good look. That's not a good look. I mean, she is the VP, and her former boss, who you always have something to say about, did at least put an executive order to allow her to keep her detail for 18 months. Now, in the big scheme of things, hey, look, they'll all find a way to find other security. But it's always just gotta be that thing that he does. And it's just not cool. Because like some people say, oh, well, Fauci's a white guy. He's done it to other people and everything like that. And that's true. That is true. But none of those people were the vice president of the United States. None of those people received an executive order from a then sitting president and Joe Biden. You see how, like, a lot of times things can always be skewed to fit a certain narrative. But there are times when things are done and it just is what it is. These are facts. This is not fiction. This is facts. You can look it up. Joe Biden signed an 18-month executive order to allow her to continue to have Secret Service throughout. Another big difference is she's a woman. She's a woman. So unlike, maybe some other guys or, that may be a little more physically intimidating or whatever, she's a woman. So she needs her detail. And I'm sorry, she is the first, whether black or white, she is the first woman to be the vice president of the United States. So you don't think it would be, a little more like, hey, man, let me just back off. It's not costing you anything. You'll say it's costing taxpayers stuff. Yeah, but I mean, that $1 million a day thing you got going on down in D.C. is costing taxpayers. You don't have any compassion to say, hey, look, any kind of wherewithal. She is the first woman as vice president. He wanted to let her keep her detail 18 months. All right, cool. Let her keep the detail. But no, it's another part of the plan of just being a jerk. I don't even know if I call it evil anymore. I just call it just being a nasty jerk. Like we talked about the other week, you put Obama's picture somewhere around the corner so when people go to the White House, they can't even see it. Just being a nasty person. And unfortunately, when you have a person that's nasty like that, this is what scares a lot of black people, is because it, in a sense, makes other people feel like they can be nasty. They can bend the rules. They can do what they want to do. And then, can somebody say January 6th? And then still get away with it because you will allow them to get away with it. These are the reasons why a lot of times people, minorities, fear when people get in power like this because, it doesn't seem, is overt to most people, but it's a little bit here. Let me take a little chip there. Let me take something out of the Smithsonian here. Let me say that slavery in this country didn't exist here. Let me just do all of these little things. And I know our Republican friends will say, you're making a big deal about nothing. But the funny part is a lot of that nothing doesn't affect you. But a lot of all of those somethings affect me. So, like I said, I'm pretty sure she has enough money to get her own detail between her and her husband. But it always just makes me think. When people decide to vote, because I'm always going to hammer this in because we're going to have the midterms coming up. When people decide to vote a certain way, when people decide not to vote at all, hey, I guess it's your right to do either one. But it also allows people to disrespect you. And hopefully one day when we as a society come back together and say, hey, look, a disrespect for you is a disrespect for me. But hey, I'm only one guy. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Come on. Pass this around so more people can watch and give their input. But until I see you a little later, make sure you live life. Don't let life live you.